Isabella tightened her grip on the mop handle, trying to steady her aching arms as she glanced at the clock mounted high on the ornate wall. Nearly midnight. She sighed, her breath fogging faintly against the glossy surface of the marble tiles as she polished them for what felt like the 100th time. Her body begged her to stop, but her mind kept whispering the truth. She needed the hours. She needed the money. She couldn't afford to walk away early. The Cross estate was nothing like the rundown apartment she rented with peeling wallpaper and a heater that rattled louder than it worked. No, this place was another world entirely. Chandeliers dripping with crystals, paintings in golden frames that looked too expensive to even breathe near, velvet curtains that hung heavy and silent against tall windows. Every step Isabella took echoed softly, reminding her just how small she was in this palace. Her employers, a housekeeping service that sometimes sent staff to the city's most prestigious homes, had warned her, "Do not speak to Mr. Cross if you see him. Do not bother him. Do not linger in restricted areas." The rules had been repeated so many times that Isabella had nearly laughed. Why would a man like Julian Cross ever notice a maid scrubbing his floors? And yet, she had wondered. Everyone in the city had heard of him. A man who built an empire from his college dorm room. A man whose ideas reshaped the technology people used every day. Newspapers described him as cold, brilliant, untouchable. People spoke of him like he wasn't flesh and blood, but something sharper, more elusive. Isabella had always dismissed it. Billionaires lived in a world that had nothing to do with her own. Or so she thought. She bent low to reach beneath the carved banister, brushing dust from the rail when a voice cut through the silence. "You're not supposed to be in here this late," a man said. Isabella's head snapped up. Her heart leapt in her throat. The mop clattered to the floor as she whirled around. And there he was. Julian Cross himself stood only a few feet away. Her breath hitched. She had seen his face before, on magazine covers, business articles, headlines scrolling across her phone when she scrolled through news she could barely relate to. But in person, Julian was startlingly different. Taller than she expected, dressed simply in a black shirt and slacks. No tie, no formality. His dark hair was slightly mussed as if he had been working late, his sleeves rolled up. His sharp gray eyes caught the low light, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. I'm sorry," Isabella stammered, fumbling for words. They asked me to finish the East Wing tonight. I didn't think anyone would." "You didn't think anyone would notice?" he interrupted, though his voice wasn't cruel. His lips curved faintly, almost amused, though his gaze never softened. I need the overtime," she admitted quickly, her cheeks flushing. "Bills don't wait for anyone, not even billionaires." The words escaped before she could stop them. She immediately regretted it. What if he fired the entire service for her slip? What if? But then, Julian laughed. It was a short, genuine laugh, not the polished kind people used at galas or board meetings. A sound that seemed surprised to even escape him. Isabella blinked, caught off guard. He leaned slightly against the banister, folding his arms, still watching her as if she was more interesting than any headline or report waiting on his desk. "Most people," Julian said, "don't dare speak like that to me. Most people don't have much to lose," Isabella replied before she could stop herself. He tilted his head. "And you do." She hesitated, clutching the rag in her hands. Honesty seemed risky, but something about his steady eyes made her push forward. "Yes, my job, my rent, my life, really. One mistake, and it all unravels." Julian's expression shifted. The faint smile faded, replaced by something she couldn't name. Thoughtfulness? Curiosity? Perhaps even understanding. "You clean houses every night?" he asked, his voice softer now. "Most nights. Sometimes offices. Hotels, too." She tried to shrug as if it didn't matter, though the knot in her stomach ached. "What the verpi?" Julian's gaze lowered briefly to the mop on the ground, then back to her face. You look exhausted. Heat rushed to her cheeks again. She straightened, crossing her arms lightly. I'm Fina. I didn't say you weren't fine, Julian replied. His tone carried a quiet conviction that unsettled her more than his sharp gaze. I said you look exhausted. There's a difference. For a moment, neither of them moved. The silence wasn't empty. It pulsed with something unspoken, something that hung in the air between them. Isabella shifted, unsure of what to say. Finally, she forced herself to break the tension. I should finish this hallway. Julian didn't move out of her way. Instead, he studied her another long moment before speaking. Do you know why I'm awake this late? She blinked. No, sir. He gave a half smile at the formal title. I was working. I always am. But lately, I've wondered if I've forgotten how to talk to people outside of business meetings. How to just talk. And then, here you are, telling me billionaires don't escape bills either. Isabella swallowed hard, unsure if he was teasing her or confiding something real. He stepped aside finally, giving her space to pass, though his voice followed her. What's your name? Her hand tightened on the mop handle. She almost lied. It felt safer that way. But something in his tone, firm yet curious, pulled the truth out of her. Isabella, she said quietly. Julian's gray eyes softened just slightly. Isabella, he repeated, as if testing how the name felt in his mouth. And for reasons she couldn't explain, the sound of it on his lips made her heart race. The next evening, Isabella expected her shift at the Cross Estate to pass quietly, just as it always had before that strange midnight encounter. She convinced herself that Julian would be far too busy to even remember her name, much less speak to her again. Billionaires didn't dwell on conversations with maids. They didn't linger on faces of people who disappeared into the background. And yet, as she carried a basket of freshly laundered linens down the wide hallway, she caught the faint sound of footsteps. Strong, steady, deliberate. Her pulse quickened. Julian. He appeared from the study at the end of the corridor, a folder of papers in one hand, his phone in the other. His sharp gaze landed on her instantly, as if he had expected her to be there. Isabella froze, nearly tripping over the hem of the carpet. She scrambled to steady the basket, her cheeks burning. Isabella, he said, his voice even but undeniably warm. Her name sounded different tonight. Less like curiosity, more like recognition. Mr. Cross, she replied quickly, fumbling for the formal address. I didn't mean to. You don't need to explain, he interrupted gently. He slid the phone into his pocket, closing the folder with a quiet snap. I wanted to ask if you've eaten. She blinked at him, certain she had misheard. What? Dinner, he clarified. Have you eaten tonight? Her throat tightened. No employer had ever asked her such a thing. Most barely noticed if she existed at all. No, she admitted hesitantly. Not yet. I usually wait until after my shift. Julian studied her for a long moment, then nodded toward the grand dining hall. Cool me. Share a meal with me. Isabella's eyes widened. Oh no, I couldn't. You can't, Julian said simply, his voice leaving no space for argument, yet carrying no arrogance either. I won't have you working through the night on an empty stomach. Her instinct was to protest again, to cling to the invisible line that divided them. But something in his tone, a quiet sincerity, disarmed her. Against every rule and every ounce of logic, she followed him. The dining hall was vast, its long polished table gleaming beneath a crystal chandelier. Yet Julian didn't lead her to the far end, where he might normally sit like a king at a throne. Instead, he pulled out a chair near the center and gestured for her to sit. Isabella lowered herself carefully, still clutching the edge of the basket as though it were shield. A staff member appeared briefly to set down 2 plates of steaming food, seared salmon, roasted vegetables, fresh bread. Isabella's mouth watered instantly, though she tried to hide it. Julian caught the flicker of her glance and said, Eat, please. She hesitated only a moment longer before lifting her fork. The first bite nearly brought tears to her eyes. Warm, seasoned, perfect. For a moment she forgot her exhaustion, forgot the mop and the endless scrubbing, forgot even who sat across from her. Julian leaned back slightly, watching her reaction, not with judgment, but with quiet satisfaction, as though seeing her enjoy a meal gave him more comfort than tasting it himself. "This house is beautiful," Isabella said finally, hoping to fill the silence. "It must feel peaceful living here." Julian's expression darkened almost imperceptibly. "Peaceful," he repeated, as if testing the word. "Perhaps, but not alive. These walls don't echo with laughter. They don't hold voices. Only silence." The way he said it made Isabella's chest ache. For all the grandeur around him, Julian sounded lonely. She wondered how many people ever saw past his empire to notice. "Sometimes silence is worse than noise," she murmured. Julian's gray eyes lifted sharply to hers, as if her words struck something hidden. He didn't reply immediately. Instead, he reached for the bread, tearing a piece slowly, thoughtfully. "You see things clearly," he said finally. "Most people in this house, in my life, they speak carefully. They calculate every word. You don't." Her cheeks flushed. "I don't have time to calculate. Life doesn't give me that luxury." He tilted his head, studying her as if she were a puzzle he wanted to solve. "What does life give you?" She faltered. No one had ever asked her that. "Work," she said at last. "Responsibility. The hope that if I push hard enough, tomorrow might not be as heavy." Julian set the bread down, his gaze steady. "And what do you want for yourself?" Her throat tightened again. What did she want? A question so simple, yet one she had buried under survival. "I want to live," she whispered, surprising herself with the honesty. "Not just exist, not just scramble to pay bills. I want to wake up one day and not feel like the world is pressing down on my chest." The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was thick, charged, filled with unspoken truths. Julian leaned forward slightly, resting his arms on the table. "You remind me," he said slowly, "of why I started all of this, why I built it. It wasn't for the money. It wasn't even for the recognition. It was because I believed I could change something, make life lighter for people. But somewhere along the way, I think I forgot what that meant." Their eyes locked, and Isabella's heart hammered at her chest. She should look away. She should remember who he was, who she was. But in that moment, titles and wealth melted. He wasn't a billionaire, and she wasn't a maid. They were two people staring across a table, realizing how much they had both been carrying. When the meal ended, Isabella rose quickly, clutching her basket. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "For dinner. For everything." Julian stood as well, his gaze lingering on her. "This doesn't have to be the last time." Her breath caught. She wanted to believe him. But reality crashed back in her mind like cold water. "Mr. Cross," she said firmly, forcing strength in her tone, "you live in a world I'll never belong to. I clean your floors. That's all." For the first time since she had met him, Julian's confidence faltered. A shadow crossed his face, not of anger, but of something deeper, something that sounded almost like loss. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "but I've built my world however I wanted before. Who says I can't change it again?" Isabella's pulse thundered as she turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing down the silent hallway. She told herself she was strong for drawing that line. She told herself she would forget the way he had looked at her, the way her name had sounded on his lips. But deep down, she knew the truth. This was only the beginning. The early morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the Cross estate, casting a golden glow on the polished floors. Isabella stood by the window, folding freshly laundered linens, but her mind was elsewhere. Every sound seemed to echo in her thoughts. The distant clang of silverware in the kitchen, the faint creak of a door opening, footsteps on the stairs. She had tried to bury herself in work, to focus on the tasks at hand, but nothing could erase the memory of Julian's voice, the way he had looked at her the night of their dinner. And then, as if on cue, she heard it, the soft click of shoes approaching. Her pulse quickened. Isabella. She turned, and there he was, Julian, standing at the doorway, holding a small stack of letters in his hand. His expression was calm, yet something in his eyes betrayed a tension she hadn't seen before. "Mr. Cross," she said, her voice steady despite the rapid beat of her heart. "Good morning." "Morning," he replied, stepping closer. "I was hoping to find you before the day began. There's something I want to share." Her curiosity piqued, she put down the linens. "What is it?" Julian handed her one of the letters. The envelope was plain, yet there was a weight to it, a sense of importance. Isabella hesitated before opening it. The paper inside was handwritten, delicate script that immediately drew her attention. "Who is it from?" she asked, glancing at Julian. He shrugged. "Someone from my past. Someone who reminded me why life should be more than just work, more than just obligation." Isabella read the letter silently. It spoke of family, of promises made long ago, of opportunities to embrace life fully rather than exist merely for routine. She looked up at Julian, seeing him not as a billionaire or employer, but as a man who, despite all his accomplishments, still saw connection, still valued the simplest truths. "You've changed my mind," he said softly, "about everything, about how I've lived these past years. I want more, and I wanted to be with someone who reminds me of what truly matters." Her chest tightened. She wanted to speak, but words failed her. Julian stepped closer, his hand brushing lightly against hers, and in that simple gesture, he conveyed 1,000 unspoken thoughts: care, respect, and hope. "Isabella," he continued, "I don't want to pretend that our worlds are separate anymore. I want to bridge them. I want to share every day with you, if you'll let me." Tears blurred her vision. She felt a swirl of emotions: fear, disbelief, joy, and longing, all at once. "Julian, He lifted a finger to her lips gently. "No words yet. Just trust. Just feel." For a long moment, the only sounds in the room were the soft rustle of curtains and the distant call of birds outside. Then, slowly, Isabella reached up and placed her hand over his. A spark of certainty passed between them, silent yet profound. Days turned into weeks, and their connection deepened. They shared small, intimate moments, quiet walks in the estate gardens, evenings discussing books and music, laughter echoing through corridors that had once felt sterile and empty. Isabella found herself learning the rhythms of Julian's world, and he, in turn, rediscovered the simplicity of joy through her eyes. But life, as it always does, presented challenges. Rumors began to swirl among the staff. Whispers that the billionaire's interest in the maid was more than casual. Julian's associates raised questions, concerned about appearances and propriety. And Isabella, ever cautious, wondered if their growing bond could survive the scrutiny of others. One rainy afternoon, as she folded laundry in the staff quarters, Julian appeared once more. His coat was soaked, his expression determined. "We can't hide forever," he said. "I don't want to hide, and I don't want you to either." Isabella looked up, her eyes meeting his, searching for reassurance. "What if they judge us? What if people think I'm just not enough?" Julian stepped closer, cupping her face gently. "Isabella, it's never been about what anyone else thinks. It's about us, about the life we choose together. You are more than enough in every way that matters." Tears fell freely now, and Julian wiped them with the back of his hand, a small, tender smile spreading across his face. "I've waited a long time to feel this, to feel whole. And I want to spend every day proving that you're worth more than all the gold in the world." The days that followed were filled with small, joyful victories. A quiet picnic in the gardens, a stolen kiss beneath the chandelier in the dining hall, shared coffee in the early hours before the house awakened. The bond between them became unshakable, built not on wealth or status, but on understanding, laughter, and mutual respect. And then came the night that changed everything. Julian had organized a small celebration in the garden, candlelight flickering on the water features, lanterns hanging from the trees. He took Isabella's hand in his, looking deep into her eyes. "Isabella," he said softly, "this isn't just a moment. It's a promise. I want to face the future with you. No walls, no distance, no fear. Just us." Isabella felt her heart swell, every doubt and worry melting away. "Julian, I've never been happier in my life," she whispered. He smiled, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "Then let's not waste another second." And under the stars, amidst the soft glow of candlelight and the gentle murmur of the garden, Julian and Isabella made their promises to each other. Not just words, but a commitment to shared life, shared dreams, and shared hearts. From that night on, the Cross Estate was no longer just a house of silence. It echoed with laughter, whispered secrets, and the quiet certainty that two people had found what they had been searching for all along: love, trust, and the courage to believe in happiness. Sparkles, thanks for watching our story. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming, exciting, and adventure-filled stories. Your support helps us bring you new tales every week, so you never miss a journey into wonder and emotion.